Welcome to Exposure Therapy, and today our guest is commercial photographer Richard Dubois out of Montreal. Richard,
Ottawa, actually.
you're in Ottawa now. Awesome,
I'm in Ottawa
awesome,
now. I was in Toronto, but I'm in Ottawa now.
beautiful. And Richard has shot all over the world in some of the major industry markets like New York, Los Angeles, Toronto, and the list goes on for a lot of large corporate entities as well. And he's done some great stuff, and he's got some exciting imagery. I'm excited for him to share with us today. So, Richard, thanks again for coming on today. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So just before we started recording, you had mentioned that you started shooting fashion and kept shooting fashion, but that you also admire all sorts of different types of photography. So I guess what was the initial thing that lit that spark that got you into photography? Was it a picture? Was it someone in your life that was took pictures? That was it getting a camera in your hands? What was that journey like starting for you?
Well, it actually, if you go back in time, it started when I was in university. I got my first camera way back in the early 90s, and I was shooting theater, which is a lot of people photography with actors who, by the way, made great models. And at the same time, I befriended a really great photographer named Stephen. This is at Queen's University in Kingston, and he happened to have a small modeling agency. And he asked me if I'd be interested in shooting some of his models to help them build up their portfolios and stuff. And I thought, yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I found that I really enjoyed working with models. It was like working with actors. It's like they take direction well, and you can be creative, but you also have to be specific on how you do the shoots. And I kind of got hooked from there, and I just kept on doing it for decades. Uh, yeah.
What's your favorite part of shooting?
Um, I think that it's the creative aspect, but in a group environment. Like I love the creative aspects of photography. I love the lighting. I love the composition. I love the ideas you can generate. But I also like the group effort. I think it's more interesting to me shooting with a team of
Mm,
like-minded people who are also really talented. I had the great privilege of working with some incredibly talented people over the years who've really made me look good. I, like you said earlier, I love like wildlife photography. I love people who go out in the field, who do travel photography, that kind of stuff. But a lot of that's sort of loner, kind of you do it alone and you go on
mhm.
your grand adventure. And that's never was kind of the way I like to shoot. But boy, do I love seeing that kind of work.
Mm.
I prefer shooting with a group of people and having a very specific project in mind and seeing that project come to fruition.
Since you're talking about working with teams of people, when I was looking through the photos you sent in to show here, I saw this one, and I thought it's an amazing photo. And I was thinking about you must have had like everybody was just firing on all cylinders here. There's you, of course, doing the photograph and then the lighting. Then there's the hairstylist, there's the stylist, there's a makeup artist, there's whoever's responsible for the set design, and all of that works together just beautifully. So, can you describe kind of what went into the shoot with your team?
Yeah, so yeah, I really love this shoot. This was client work, and the art director on set said, or even before we ever got together, we were brainstorming for ideas, and they said the client wanted to do something that looked like '60s postcards
Mm.
and like hair salon '60s style postcards. And somebody happened to know about a really great hotel in Toronto called the Gladstone, and they have these rooms that are theme rooms. And so we rented the Canadiana room, I think it was called. You can barely see it, but in the corner of the left-hand shot, there's like a full photo wallpaper of a forest,
Awesome.
and everything's sort of wood paneling, and of course the hair people were incredible. That's what the hair looked like. It's the model's actual hair, and actually the one on the right might be a wig. I'm not sure. And then the wardrobe is spot on. Like it was so '60s sort of go-go girl with the go-go boots and everything. And so this was a profoundly satisfying shoot because it was exactly what we said it was going to look like, what we hoped it would look like from the get-go, before we even figured out all the logistics. And so yeah, this to this day, this is known as the postcard shoot.
If I know in a lot of times you mentioned an art director, so they might be responsible for coming up with a whole concept and hiring people to execute on the various aspects. But when it's been that's been kind of directing that shoot, when you stepped into that role, kind of art director, how do you go about organizing a shoot with a team to come up with a result like that?
Well, once you've done it for a while, once you've been shooting, I was in Toronto. It's a big city with a lot of resources, and after a while, you just sort of get to know people. You get to know location scouts. You get to know modeling agencies. You get to know other agencies that rep hair, makeup, wardrobe people. Um, so any or food stylists or pop uh, stylists. So eventually, you just sort of know where to go and or know who to ask, and you try to put together a team that way, depending on the project. You'll have sometimes casting calls, particularly for talent like models, and or they'll send you like a set of pictures and say, here are some models that are available, etc. And then you just have a discussion with the people in your team, like who will be best for this shoot, who will be best for that, and of course, after a while too, you start when you repeatedly work with your favorite people.
Hmm.
Like I know a few hair and makeup people that are just brilliant. There's so many talented people in Toronto, and I got really good at figuring out who's going to make me look good. So I had to make sure I didn't screw up. So it's like because what's great is when you got a great team together, you don't have to worry about anybody else. You know they're going to be great. You just focus on your thing and you make sure you do your part right. And and the other big aspect of this team environment is listen to what they have to say.
Hmm.
Don't try to run the show, even if you're the quote unquote boss on set. You might not be like I might not be paying everybody. Somebody else is paying everybody,
Hmm.
and they'll likely be on set too. But they'll defer to the team. Uh, but I would be really shooting myself in the foot if I didn't pay attention to what everybody else had to say. Because
Hmm.
some great ideas have come out of nowhere, and I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I've always said photographers get unfairly too much credit for successful shoots
Yeah.
for in this
Yeah.
kind of commercial world.
Yeah, to you, yeah, exactly. Like you're placing kind of it, yeah, exactly. You're just playing that small part, right? And everyone's looking through that lens, and an
Right.
image like that. Let's
Literally
bring
and
it back up.
figuratively.
Yeah, like that. It looks so like you just don't see the amount of people and man hours and effort and cost that went into making that shoot. You just see a quick picture and you think, oh, that's neat, and move on, right? But
Yeah, it's like,
um,
wow, this guy took a great picture. And I was like, oh, no, I clicked the button,
yeah,
and that was a really small location, and we had like 10 people crammed into this tiny hotel room, and so you had to keep moving things around just so they're not in the way of the shoot. Because it was a perfect location, but it was a little on the small side. So
now you've shot for a long, long, long time, and you've no doubt worked with various skill levels of model and various professions. Like there'll be models. There might be dancers, as you mentioned before, actors, and um, what's been your experience working kind of with that cross section of people? And do you have kind of a favorite that you tend towards for whatever reasoning?
well, if I were to name my favorites, the list would go on for an hour. There's so many, like I said, so many great talented people I got to work with over the years. Um, some of my fondest memories of shooting with people were on cities other than Toronto.
Mm.
So, for instance, last year I spent many months shooting for an e-commerce company in Montreal, and it was a really great experience because it was such a well put together company that really had their setup was really great. The studio environment was very positive. I shot a lot of product photography, which I do occasionally, but I'm not as strong with. But boy, did they have great art directors and people who would just sort of help you figure out how to do stuff.
Mm.
That one really comes to mind. The other is when on the few occasions when I traveled to another city, like in the U.S. I went to Paris, and I met like some crazy talented people who are just they're very natural at what they do. Toronto's a big city, it's a big market, but it kind of pales compared to like New York.
Mm.
Like, and I'm really happy for a lot of people I work with who have moved on to New York or LA, and they're thriving. They're at the top of their game. I'm at my modest level and I'm happy here, but they've gone on to do some extraordinary things. And I see them in social media once in a while and I go, wow, this guy's doing great.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned and when I was doing some research on you, like I saw that you were in all those different major markets, and you know, Los Angeles and New York probably being the largest, I think, anyways. But what's
Well,
is there?
North America, those are the two big ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So would you mostly travel to shoot? Is there a robust enough photography or fashion scene in Ottawa or surrounding area to keep you busy?
There's none in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So I'm plotting my next trip to Toronto. I
Nice.
should have figured that. It's Ottawa's a very small market for
Right.
most things comparatively, but that's fine. I've been to a lot of interesting places over the years, and I really love living in Ottawa. So, and Ottawa is like partway between Montreal and Toronto, and
Right.
I think the bulk of my traveling days are over anyway. So, I mean, if a really great gig came along that required I travel to the U.S., sure, but I'm in no hurry to go.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'm settling down into a more easy routine. So,
I'd love to take a look at some of your model work here, and I'll bring this one up.
yeah, this was a magazine shoot, and the model name is Ruben. I'll always remember his name. He was phenomenally good. Uh, so what we wanted to do here, this was so when you shoot for a magazine, oftentimes if it's fashion related, you'll shoot an editorial, which is simply
Mm.
a set of images with usually the same model or models. And when you come up with the idea for the shoot, you'll be showcasing a look, a feel, a series of clothes to highlight a fashion season, for instance, or some theme or concept that you really want to put into that issue. And this one in particular, it was just highlighting some really nice men's clothing and all that. But because of the model, I really thought he had sort of a classic
Mm.
mid 20th century portrait vibe going on with him. So everything sort of leaned in that direction. And everyone seemed pretty happy with that because that's what I wanted to go. This is an example of where, like, this is what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? And everyone was like, yeah, sure, sounds great. He was great. And he had a certain vibe about him that was really cool and collected. The clothes kind of worked for it as well, and the location and everything. I've always liked this shot because it looks like something that came out of a portrait book from like post World War II or something like that. Like, or he's like, I don't know, he's some young guy in a village somewhere in Europe in 1948 or something like that. So I've always liked this shot for that reason.
Yeah, like
Portraiture,
you're.
the Venn diagram of portraiture and fashion it overlaps quite a bit. And this would be a good example of that, I think.
Yeah, it gives me like European, like Jack Kerouac, James Dean kind of vibes, something like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. Amazing.
Or the Irving Penn kind of portrait or something
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
along those
Yeah. Total.
lines. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, everyone look at that and think of something totally different. They might think it's contemporary, and that's okay too. You never know what people are going to think of stuff.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that, especially in the world of social media, and kind of that's how we brand ourselves now is through social media. How do you navigate the I guess the terrain and territory of critique and criticism, and you know, being kind of out there and exposed for all to comment on?
Yeah, if it's a critique or criticism or compliments or whatever from anybody, it's fine. I don't mind. I mean, uh, everybody has an opinion on everything, especially things creative, and everybody has an opinion on photography, and I'm good with it all. The only opinion that ever really truly matters to me is when someone is paying me to take the photo,
Yeah.
and I just want to make sure, I did it right, and we meet in the middle somewhere where everybody's happy. But
Yeah.
But otherwise, I've never been at the receiving end of a bunch of nasty comments or anything like that. So it's fine. I've never. I'm not a big social media junkie. I do it just because work kind of requires it.
Mhm.
But if it weren't for the commercial work that I do, I probably would barely be on social media. So if you look at my Instagram or whatever, it's boring as hell because it's 90% work pictures and the occasional pictures up at the lake or something like that,
Yeah.
and that's it. So
On enduring criticism, it also does help that you do excellent work. So I mean, it's
yeah,
do something that's hard to criticize, and you probably
yeah,
not a lot less. So Elizabeth Arden is one of the brands that you've done some work with. Can you talk about the shoot yet?
yeah. This is the first time. It's not my first shoot in New York, but it's my biggest shoot in New York. And this was done a few years back. It was actually a 3 days of shooting. It was an extraordinarily big and complicated, and at some point along the way, just kind of nightmarish, to be honest. Like there was a lot of cooks in that kitchen, and I was
Mm.
not one of the cooks. I was just
Right.
standing back, letting everybody else sort stuff out. We were like Midtown Manhattan, and Elizabeth Arden, the company, owns spas called the Red Door Spas, and so we ended up shooting in a space that was above one of their flagship spa. And so it was really beautiful and luxurious, and we had a ton of room, and there's some great talent on set and everything like that. But it was a complicated, busy 3 days. It was exhausting. Um, but in the end, I got a few shots that I was genuinely proud of and, really happy to get. And it was also the kind of thing where you post this stuff online or you put it on your website online and people will go, oh, okay, he shoots for big advertising clients occasionally. Not that often, but occasionally something like that will come up. And but it was a real learning experience because the bigger the shoot, uh, not necessarily the better. Like I can just imagine what some film sets are like when you don't have a whole
Mm.
bunch of people sort of directing traffic. And on this particular job, and I can't stress enough, great people, amazing bunch of people, but there weren't enough traffic cops going around sort of
Right.
helping people figure out what they're doing next or, coordinating. Because ideas change. And if it's 3 days of shooting, you're going to come up with things you didn't think of, and then you're going to change this and change that. And so, so this was probably one of the more educational gigs I've ever had,
Mm.
and I'll never forget it.
Sorry. Now, did you shoot both the model and the product for this one?
I shot some product, not in this shot though.
Okay.
This shot I did not shoot. I shot product for the spa because they have cosmetics and um, what else did they have? They had a few products, fragrances and things like that that they sell in the spa. The spa itself is like one of those places where I would never go because I can't afford it. But this product, the makeup line for Elizabeth Arden, I didn't actually shoot any of it. It was just for the spa. So that was a provided.
Quick question for you. Just for larger shoots like this, like I think of film sets. You just mentioned like a large film set, and
Mhm.
the difference between the independent production and the studio production. You have to, one of the things is you have to be a union actor or a union crew
Yeah.
member or something like this. Is there an equivalent there for photographers to work on larger shoots as well?
The closest equivalent, I think, on big productions like that is where pretty much everybody will have a rep, and so the reps will kind of keep the best interests of their talent in mind. On smaller shoots, in fact, virtually every commercial job I ever did in Toronto or in Canada, the model was had a rep. Oftentimes, the other people on set will have a rep, but it's not quite like a union thing. It's not quite as, um, I guess, with like an actors guild, you have a set of rules that have to be followed and conditions that have to be followed. It's not quite that rigid, I don't think, on a studio, sorry, a fashion shoot or a commercial shoot. But at the same time, like I've only had a tiny bit of experience on film sets, and I know people who do film and television all the time, and it's a different beast, I think, television or film.
How, I guess on your bigger shoots, what would be a typical length of time for a shoot? Like, they're 8 hours, 12 hours, 4 hours, and everywhere in between.
Yes to all of the above. Yeah. Sometimes it goes quick. Usually it doesn't, because things like hair and makeup can take a long time.
Hmm.
Like those postcard shots, the hair took forever. So there's a lot of hurry up and wait. Um,
Yeah.
if you can get everything you're setting out to do between 8 and 10 hours, that's a reasonable day. Ideally 8 or less, but if you can get it all done, you know, I mean, I imagine for some people that have who shoot commercial work or creative work, they got to get it done before the sun goes down, for example.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so everybody has a time constraint of some sort. So but yeah, a good day will mean that you finish up at a reasonable hour, and everyone can go home for dinner. That's
Setting a couple of boundaries, I guess, is okay, right? To give you a little bit of structure for a creative flow, right? It gives you a boundaries will give you a direction.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, one real good comparison between film and television and shooting still photography is craft services.
Oh
They
yeah.
sure there's a lot of food and stuff to drink and everything on set, and everyone will want to stay because
Yeah.
they'll be well fed. So
Yeah.
I guess that's a
Absolutely.
big commonality between the two.
Yeah. The craft services is a big deal
Oh, it's
behind the
huge.
scenes for sure. Yeah.
And in the grand scheme of things, it costs next to nothing compared to some of the other things that are going on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so don't skimp on the food.
Yeah. Keep the coffee hot and flowing.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. All right. Another magazine.
Yeah, this was for Elle Canada,
Okay.
and
Awesome.
this was speaking of length of time. This shoot was done in 4 hours.
Okay.
Um, this I'm still friends with this model. She's got a couple of kids now. Uh, and I picked this one because I have very fond memories of this shoot because I knew the model before the day of the shoot. I'd worked with her before, and this was the very first time I ever shot for Elle magazine. And the in this case, it was the art director for the magazine itself was saying, "Hey, this is what I would like to do." And I said, "Oh, that sounds nice." And so I thought that she had picked the perfect model,
Awesome.
and
Yeah.
the all we needed was two pictures, this one and another one, that were part of the beauty section. They call it Beauty Lab for Elle magazine, and
Okay.
this was I had been shooting long enough to know um, that it's work. It requires effort. You have to be you have to be paying attention. You got to be ready for the day. But this shoot, as my very first shoot for Elle magazine, was smooth and fun and easy, and we took our time and we got all the finals in within 4 hours, and everybody was ready to go home. Everything about this shoot uh, brought pure joy to everybody that day. So, and believe me, those don't happen nearly as often as the opposite. So, but I'm forever friends with that art director. She no longer works for Elle magazine, but we're still friends, and we and I think I'm pretty sure all the people that I work with that day, I'm still friends with. Like we keep up with each other on social media, and so anyway, very fond memories of this day.
How much of the success of that shoot do you attribute to your pre-existing relationship with that model? You already kind of had that some sort of shorthand.
I definitely working with Melissa, the model, that was helpful because she's so nice, and we had a nice professional friendship prior. But I had never worked with the other people on set, and there were only 5 people on set,
Hmm.
including myself and the model, the art director, someone for hair and makeup, and we had one assistant on set. So we had a grand total of 5 people on set, and I think the reason why it was so great is because it was just this great synergy and a bunch of pros in the room who were just all really pleasant people. And it was one of the smallest shoots I've ever been on. So yeah, it was fantastic. In a lot of ways, it was a polar opposite of the Elizabeth Arden work because
Yeah.
yeah, I have positive memories of all of it, but that one was quite different from the other.
Yeah, probably just a different level of stress, right? You can take a little bit of a slower pace through it and relax and kind of, you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. And like you said, too many cooks in the kitchen, right? When you're allowing for so many things to be contributed, right? You don't actually take any action on any of them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. In this case, we had one cook in the kitchen, and she
Yeah.
didn't act like she was the boss at all. She was the nicest editor I ever met. Like she's so nice.
Amazing. That's great to hear.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prairie View Photo Tours. Prairie View Photo Tours invites photographers of all levels to book their all-inclusive, authentic Alberta adventure at pvphototours.com.
I love this photo. This is so cool.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that I sent you a behind the scenes of this, but I'm glad you put that one. There it is. Yeah, I know we can come back to that one. This was addressed by a Canadian designer named Stefan Karas, and he's a designer. He's actually Greek, but he's in the fashion world. He's fairly well known in Canada, and he's also known elsewhere in the world. He dresses celebrities a lot for film festivals or for red carpet events all over the place. And so fun, interesting, eccentric guy. And so he had this really unusual dress. I didn't find this dress. It was the wardrobe person who you'll see in a moment. But she had a couple of dresses to shoot. And I thought, how in the world are we going to shoot this thing? Because it was, well, you can see how it Méduse is French for a jellyfish.
Oh, wow.
And so
Awesome. That's
yeah,
great.
so and that wasn't the name of the dress, but that was a name that we thought of, and the designer thought, oh, that's great because it kind of looks like a big jellyfish floating in the water kind of thing. And
And he's Greek
so
and Medusa, right?
yeah, it's not Medusa, yeah. And so but I was like, how are we going to shoot this? And the wardrobe person had a great idea. And if you want to switch to the other shot, you'll see, she said, let's just tie a bunch of threads on to all the different bits that are sticking out. And we'll have the people in the team hold up the threads and sort of give it some lift. And so we have one, two, three, four people, and each person is holding two threads. So that's 8 parts of the jellyfish that could be floating. And the model was great because she thought it was the funniest thing in the world. She couldn't move. She couldn't, she just said, well, just stay in one spot because the light was set just in the right spot, etc.
Yeah.
And because, we didn't need to have people walking all over the place on the backdrop, whatever. I didn't need a lot of space because I said, look, I'm going to shoot a blank set and then fill in the sides with backdrop. That's fine. I can't remember who did the wardrobe. Oh, there was 2 people, the one with the hat and the woman in the back on the opposite side on the left. So those are the 2 wardrobe people who said, let's do this. So they spent a whole bunch of time sewing, and this would be the most static shoot you could do for fashion. It's not dynamic, but it's sort of like trying to put together a sculpture, kind of like a shot of something artwork or something like that. And I was really thrilled with the results. It was a lot of fun. Everyone had a fun time because it was such a novel thing to do. When everybody is sort of used to doing things in a more common way, and then you end up doing a shoot like this where it's like, oh, how are we going to make this work? And it worked out great. It's a nice feeling in the end. So I like the behind the scenes that show you like how clever people can be and how they come up with solutions to shooting problems. And this was one of the more memorable moments like that.
Awesome. That's great. Between shoots like that, your L shoot, your this one as well, postcards. Yeah, sorry, and then this one for Elizabeth Arden. Like from small to large, what would you say is a typical range for what would be a budget for a shoot like that?
Sorry, the range for
A budget?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm not actually privy to um, all of those numbers, like because there's confidentiality,
Mhm.
etc. I would think that for an advertising shoot in New York City, the budget's pretty high. Conservatively, those 3 days cost anywhere between $50 and $100,000. The location was the company's own, like is in their
Mhm.
building in Manhattan. So that's a big savings. But they had a big a big crew and a lot of things to shoot and a lot of back and forth. So and but a lot of the people on set actually worked for Elizabeth Arden, so it was just a
Okay.
regular work day for them. So they brought in other talent. So, but it probably cost them a lot, especially if it goes on for 3 days.
Yeah.
Whereas the shoot for, let's say, in fashion, you do something called a lookbook. So if you have a designer who has a collection for spring or summer or some season, and they have, say, 30 outfits they want to showcase for that season, you'll maybe shoot two or three that will be creative and interesting, but the rest is just sort of kind of the same, kind of cataloging in a way. But you just want to highlight the dress, simple
Yeah.
background, etc. Those ones are far, far less expensive because one, designers don't, most designers are not internationally famous and they're not making a ton of money. So they have modest budgets, just a few $1,000s for everything. And agency people know that, so that's why they're able to get away with getting a good model, for instance, without breaking the bank. And I'll certainly adjust my fees accordingly because I understand that not everybody has Elizabeth Arden money
Right.
or big magazine money or whatever. So it's a pretty big range. The lowest end is free.
Yeah.
Then
Of
they
course.
show free shoots, and at the high end, you get a good chunk of cash. You're good for a month.
Nice. All right. Just switching gears a little bit here.
Yeah, there's no people in this shot that I can see anyway. So so getting back to what I was saying earlier about I really love landscape, nature photography, people who go out on location. I have a friend who shoots birds, and he's so good at it. And I just love seeing his work. But I don't. Like, he's in Africa right now shooting
Mhm.
wildlife, mostly birds. I can't do that. But this is early on when I moved to Ottawa. I just moved here a few years ago, and I just wanted to get out of the house and just explore the city a little bit. So this is downtown Ottawa, and it was a beautiful sort of a weird sky dusk, or at least the the forecast was for that. So I headed downtown, and I just brought my camera and tripod with me and just roamed around. And as the sun was going down, I was trying out long exposures because when you shoot fashion, you don't do long exposures very often. So
Yeah.
this was like a 30-second exposure, maybe a little less. But I just wanted to do something different because, like I said, I might shoot a lot of fashion and beauty, but I love other things. So, um, and this was my gothic picture of Ottawa, downtown Ottawa. And I've also always had this fascination with cities at night, like the lights and
Mhm.
the atmosphere and the quietness. But then again, there's always things going on in the city at night. I have a whole section devoted to that in my website where I photograph long exposures of different city places in different cities. And I really want to do a lot more of that, time permitting. Like I'd love to travel to other cities, and summer's coming, so I'll be able to start doing that again. Because I love this kind of stuff. It's different, it's fun, it's interesting, and it's always nice to try something new.
Yeah. Nice to get out of the box a little bit and kind of stretch your legs and, try, and not allowing yourself to be pigeonholed like, oh, I'm a portrait photographer. I'm a this photographer. Oh, I don't shoot landscapes. Well, yeah, I can.
Yeah, and you sort of you dip your toes into what other people do, and you have a greater appreciation for other people who do great work. You think, wow, that you really start to understand why certain shots are so great, and it makes looking at other photographers' work more enjoyable for me.
On that note, who are some of the other photographers you really enjoy, maybe even past or contemporary?
Well, in the fashion world, there was a few. I mentioned Irving Penn. I was always a big fan of Patrick de Marchelier. He was a fashion photographer, and he used to shoot like supermodels, quote unquote supermodels, uh, top models, a lot of actors. But he had a certain style about his work that I really enjoyed. Um, it was, for lack of a better term, someone told me this once, that my work looked, quote, honest. And I never quite understood what that meant. It sounded like a compliment to me. But when I look at Patrick de Marchelier's work, I think, oh, it feels honest. It feels real. It feels, because he was prolific at a time when everything was shot on film, and Photoshop didn't exist, and yet some of the shots he did were iconic. And when I first started shooting, I was shooting on film. I knew how to, develop my own eggs and print and all those things, and that's how old I am. Uh, so I so early on, I had a big appreciation for the work he does. I don't. I'm not fixated on any one photographer anymore. There's a lot of photographers out there that I will always stop and look, and not just famous photographers either. Like, I have a friend who shoots weddings,
Hmm.
and he is so good at it. And having shot weddings very early on in my career, and hating every minute of it, I have such an appreciation for his work. So if he's watching, shout out to Andrew. He works out of Kingston, and man, is he a good wedding photographer. He's spectacular. If any of your viewers want to know, or are in Kingston and need a wedding photograph, they're welcome to message me, and I'll happily make a recommendation. 'Cause, I mean, he's so good.
What what kind of gear do you like to shoot on these days? What's your preferred setup for shooting? Well, I guess, do you use the same setup for everything, or do you alter
Oh
it based
no,
on whether you're doing?
like you did, like for lighting or sets or backgrounds, whatever.
Oh, I'm reducing it even more to like camera lens.
Oh, okay, yeah. Um, that will that For the longest time, I still come back to it. I just like standard lens, like a 50, or whatever that is in a smaller sensor. Um, 40, I can't even remember. Anyway, for 35 mil at 50, because it's what your eye sees. It's like a standard, and I like that as a starting point. And what's nice about like a 50 1.4 was my go-to lens for a very long time, because you could get, super shallow depth of field, especially if you're shooting close-up beauty. You just have very little in focus, and you can blur out the background a little bit, but then mostly because there's just no distortion. And I always kind of like the fact that you start from something that's as real as possible. But occasionally I'll use a long lens, and more frequently nowadays, in the last few years, I like to play with a wide angle. Um, I'm not. I see it once in a while, and I think when it's done well, it's great. But some people use ultra wide lenses
Oh,
to
right.
shoot fashion, and something bulges out. But if you do it right, it can look really cool. If it's a more of an urban fashion shoot, or something that's looks or feels like it should be edgy, I really admire when people pull that off well. I do it sometimes. I don't do it a lot, but I don't make the wide angle obvious when I shoot with wide angle.
I think of the shots you're talking about, that style for like rock concerts, live music, skateboard parks, stuff like that. Kind of, it seems, surfing maybe.
Yeah, so yeah, sort of action stuff.
Yeah,
Definitely live music when there's like colored gels and all the lighting, and you're shooting a singer or a performer, and it's very dynamic. So
yeah.
that's what's nice, and everything's in focus, so you get the whole set, you get the whole experience. So I I probably don't do that as much as some other photographers do, because in part because of the commercial aspects of the work I do. You don't want to have distractions. You really want to make sure whoever's looking at your shots are looking in the right place. And if they want to wander after, great, but you want them to look
Yeah.
at the dress, or you want them to look at the shoes, or whatever it is that you're highlighting. And then the rest can happen later. So
Yeah, they're driving
But
by a bus stop or whatever, right? You have like half a second to get their attention.
great example. Like you've got or if the picture's on a bus, it's, you know,
Yeah,
you got to see it before it's gone. So yeah, absolutely. And then that's part of the strategy when shooting commercial work.
amazing. So, one of these shots that you sent me, we were talking about a little bit earlier, and this is pretty cool.
Yeah. So this is on a trip to the Caribbean, and so this was a trip. One of your earlier guests, we I think we met before this trip, but we happened to be going on this trip because there's a group of people who are shooting fitness photography. We have
Mm.
a mutual friend who publishes a fitness magazine, and so he asked me if I'd like to go. We're going to do shot some swimwear, and on the trip. This guy's name is Larry Vinette. He's a sort of a champion bodybuilder out of Montreal, I believe. Super nice guy. And the place we were at had sort of a white stucco hacienda kind of vibe going on. And Herb Ritz is a photographer I've always kind of
There
liked.
it is.
So I talked to Larry and I said, would you be interested in doing a series of shots? He says, yeah, I'd love to. And so this is one of several in the series. And this is just for fun. This is what we call a creative.
Mhm.
Uh, but we were both able to use the shots to promote ourselves. So they had these windows, and I said, Larry, climb up there and make like you're doing an Atlas thing, and you're going to try to crack the walls or whatever. And he's great. He was such a great because he's used to performing on stage,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bodybuilding competition. So he's used to performance. So we got a lot of great shots, and I liked. It was kind of fun to do the stark black and white, high contrast. Sort of anonymous because you don't really see his face in a lot of shots, but different angles. Definitely some wide angle going on in this shoot as
Mhm.
well. And so this was one of my favorite shots of the day. So it's not just fashion. Occasionally I do something like this.
I like kind of para industry. Like they're not models per se, but like you said, he's performing on stage, so he's got a lot of body awareness. A bodybuilder
Yeah,
or dancers are another one. I think they have incredible body awareness, and so I find they always gift you like these really unique poses or positions or movements that you would have never thought of, and they
yeah,
just have such awareness over what they're doing. I always find it remarkable to shoot with them.
yeah. Actors, bodybuilders, musicians, professional models of all kinds. They're all great because they're used to the performance aspect. They're used to being in front of an audience or a camera, and they have ideas, and they're really
Mm.
great at listening to ideas and sharing ideas. And this is all that great synergy thing that happens when you're on set with great people. And like I said, if I didn't listen to what other people had to say on set, I'd be cutting out literally half the great stuff that could be happening. So on that shot, it was just me and Larry. But Larry had some posing ideas. And the only feedback I remember giving him was, let's make it so it's not bodybuilderish. Like you're not doing
Right,
a bodybuilder shoot, but do show off your physique. He goes,
right,
okay. And he got it right away. He understood exactly what I meant because they have conventions and
yeah,
posing and so on. And so he was great. He was just fantastic. Everything about it felt right.
awesome, so great, so great. I don't know what's better, the model or the car.
Yeah, it's a toss up. I don't. So I showed my brother this shoot. This was another magazine shoot, and we had a general idea. I think this goes back a few years, but we had a general idea of the theme because it was a summer thing, and it was going to be sort of a high end kind of monochrome. Um, how do I describe it? It's high end, but it's not gowns and stuff. It's more like
Right.
uh, dressed, but dressed for summer kind of thing. And and I happened to get a lead on this. It's a Lincoln Continental, and it has suicide doors. So it's in case your listeners don't know, the suicide doors are the ones you can see in the metal picture. The handles are together, and it opens up like French doors in a house. So because it has suicide doors, the shot at the top was possible because notice there's no door in the way.
That's right.
And so anyway, I had a lead on this car, And I asked very politely, "Do you think we could use your car?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I've only got it for a week," because he was using it for a shoot of some sort. I think he was just shooting the car actually. But anyway, and he said, "Yeah, well, you better plan your shoot soon because I have to return the car." And so we scrambled and got this together. And this is just three of the shots. We did a whole series. We were 7 or 8 outfits to shoot, and I'm like, you think you get just sort of run out of ideas of how to photograph a model with a car? Nope. It's such a great car, and So yeah, we had a lot of time, a fun time with this car. It smelled great. It's all leather interiors.
That white leather interior is incredible.
Yeah, it's a restored car. It's in immaculate condition. I'm like, everybody, don't scratch the paint, whatever you do.
And I get like Kim Basinger vibes from the model here.
Oh yeah, she was great because she sort of got like, I think, like, for example, the middle shot, like her expression was great because it's like, what's the holdup kind of vibe? Like,
Yeah,
look
yeah.
out the window because it looked great. And I thought, let's be a little impatient. What's the holdup? And bang, it's just like, oh, that's perfect. And it also looks a bit standoffish. The whole thing feels a little bit like I'm too good. I'm too good for this kind of vibe in the whole in
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
suit. And I think we conjured up an idea where it's like, imagine you're heading somewhere and the car breaks down or whatever, and you're stuck there with this car on the side of the road. And so that was kind of a very rough framework to hang the vibe off of. And yeah, it was a good day. But yeah, I like these shots because I like that car a lot. That'll never
Right.
happen again.
Um, so this last photo I'm gonna put up was as soon as I saw it, I had to do a double take and try and figure it out, and I love it. This is so good.
So
I ultimately decided that it was a composite.
yes, it's definitely a caveat. So this was uh, it was an accessory plus hair shoot, and the person who was running the show, he was on set, and so he did the hair, like he gave the model this tight crop cut, and it was all smooth, and it was like hard as a rock with all the product in it. You don't see the front here, obviously, but the hair in front looked really cool. It had little swirls. It sort of a new take on like a 20s flapper hair, but it's super short. And anyway, that was the thing. And as we were shooting, the model was very sinewy, like she was muscular. It doesn't show it here, but when she turned her head to the towards her right, I guess, and then the art director on set, he's actually the client. He looked and he says, "Do you think we could shoot the back of the head and put it on a forward shot?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, I noticed that the cartilage or whatever it is lines up with the two lines at the back of the head, like the two, that the two lines that follow down." And I said, "Okay, well, we'll shoot it and see if I can line it up." And so when I went to put it together, I thought, my God, it lines up perfectly. So we shot a bunch, and I found two that were just perfect. And I thought, okay, this is. And what you said, you did have to do a double take because it doesn't look like a composite at
Right.
first. She has her arms in a weird place, and so you don't immediately realize, oh wait, she's facing the camera, but
Yeah, that's
it
right.
is not. So anyway, this was the surreal stage of my career, I guess. But I had a lot of fun putting this together, and we got some fun feedback on this from a lot of people because they're like, "Wait, what?"
Some of the most
Yeah,
amazing shots are like simple shots like this. I say simple because it's like there's very minimal
yeah,
elements in the photo. Not to say that it was simple to pull off, but it looks like it was effortless and simple, and it's minimal, and I love that.
minimal. Yeah, my style tends to lean towards minimalism. I'm a big advocate of less is more. I don't think clutter is a bad thing, but I prefer to keep things just as simplified as possible without undermining what you're trying to do. And this is a pretty good example of that. But this is also an even better example of sometimes on set somebody comes up with an idea and says, "Hey, can we do this?" Now this
Oh
is a bit
yeah.
of an extreme weird idea, but it just came out of the blue. Like, "Hey, can you do this?" I went, maybe," because I didn't see that. Like, I didn't notice the thing, but he was standing at an angle where he could see the back of her head, and he could move around and goes, "Well, you know what? The head looks like it could do this." And so, and here we are.
That's so
And the
great.
other thing is they thought to put that big chunky bracelet on. And when I look at this picture, I only take a glimpse at the model, but I tend to look at the big chunky bracelet. So it's a bit of a distraction because you're not looking like, wait, what's wrong with this? The first thing you do is look at that piece of metal, and then you have time to wander and go, wait, what's going on here?
That's right.
Why did my brain hurt?
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's great, man. So, Richard, I've put just at the bottom of the ticket there going across the screen, there's your website, and then there's your Instagram as well, where people can find you. Is there any other places or any places they can find you, or any other projects you have on the go that you'd like to talk about?
There's nothing. Those two links are just fine. I have a couple of projects in the works where they're sort of long-term personal projects. Like they're not for anybody but me. But as usual, those things usually get pushed to the back burner indefinitely. So I'm hoping to continue. But yeah, my website or Instagram are more than enough.
Awesome. I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been great talking to you and just kind of learning about your process and seeing some of your images here and getting your perspective on it. And what a pleasure it was to chat with you today.
Well, I'm really glad to have been invited on. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Cheers. You have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Thanks a lot, TJ.